love goes on, softly on. So don't be sighing or crying. Still live with our
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Lawyers, Guns, and Money podcast. I am Scott R. Kaufman. This is
Steve Atwell, writer of Race for the Iron Throne, a new ebook on Amazon Kindle, all about the history and politics of Game of Thrones. So please buy my book.
there will be a link to it at the bottom of this podcast at lawyersgunsandmoneyblog.com. All right, so we should get started talking about this. I mean, me personally, I consider this sort of like a housekeeping episode. Not much happens.
Very uneventful.
It's just putting the pieces in place for future developments. I mean that's my basic take on it. And what about you? I mean, you probably have some.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And before we kind of get into the meat of the episode, what did you think about the choice of the opening sequence? Because I honestly thought it wasn't that good, and the second sort of Bolton sequence was actually far more affecting while being far less graphic.
I think part of it was, and again, I mean, I talk a lot about table setting and structure on episodes of Game of Thrones, and if you look at this episode, the beginning and the end, the bookends of the episode, the scenes, we'll get to the end later, but they have something in common. We'll say. Oh, there are no spoilers, because I mean, presumably you've already seen the episode you're watching. So the wedding and the hunt at the beginning, because the hunt is it's a reminder of what Boltons are, for one,
Right.
And also of what little shits these heirs to different parts of the kingdom are, and so we begin with a little Bolton shit, and we end with a little.
That the whole point of kind of the second scene is to set up Ramsay's kind of daddy issues, that he's not an heir, right? He's not. His dad says straight up to him, "You're a Snow, not a Bolton." So,
but
I don't quite know the analogy works.
Well, no, I guess a better way to put it is that there's something wrong with kids these days. They need to get off our lawn. I mean, it's the if not direct heirs. And you're right to point that out. But that what the violence that is strategic for the fathers, putting aside the whole issue of whether or not legitimate.
Or grandfathers, yeah.
Or grandfathers. What's strategic for them is it's lost that. Now they're just sort of sociopaths.
Yeah, although, what I kind of liked about the second sequence, and we might as well just sort of say what happened in the first scene. But, Ramsay hunting Tansy, which is kind of an interesting choice of names. Not that has any relevance whatsoever. And, like, to the extent it has an effect, it shows that kind of Tyrion has become... sorry, not Tyrion. Theon has become this kind of Igor-like weak person, that he is genuinely transformed. Kind of a shift, if you were, from physical torture to psychological torture. But the reason why I liked the second scene, Bolton scene, better is you kind of have this really interesting exchange of power, that Ramsay meets his father hoping to be rewarded for having done this, in his mind, amazing thing, and he gets slapped right the fuck down.
Yeah.
He gets told, you fucked up, this wasn't what I wanted, you're not really a Bolton,
you made me
your cat is a mountaineer. And then the bit where he sort of makes his demonstration with the shaving is really quite impressive, because you see the transformation in the Reek, and Theon becoming Reek, and the extent of the hold that Ramsay has over him, with almost nothing kind of nasty going on. It's just the fact that Ramsay can actually put his throat under Theon's knife
and
who's
trust him
total
not to.
and trust him even as he's jabbing an emotional blade into Theon's heart, like telling him straight up, Robb Stark is dead, and that kind of gives him this upward power arc where now it's Ramsay who's the one who actually knows what's going on and genuinely impresses his father, so that his father kind of offers him this deal that if you take Moat Cailin, you'll be a Bolton. You'll be a Bolton. No. Anyway, so we also in the beginning, I'm going a little bit out of sequence here, I apologize. We get this interesting scene between Tyrion and Jaime that sort of sets up a scene with Jaime and Bronn, where kind of the two now Tyrion puts it as the dwarf and the cripple. In the books, it's this great line, handless and noseless, the Lannister lads. And they're kind of in an interesting place of equality, that in their previous interactions, Jaime had been the beloved son. He was the better of the two. He was the more powerful of the two. And now they're kind of in this place of equality. And Tyrion's kind of saying, okay, look, I've lived my life with a disability. I know how to do this. Stop being such a whiny baby and, like, get off your ass and do something about it. Jaime... Oh. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, just to riff off the equality, one of the things that's really interesting about this scene is the fact that Jaime remains seated throughout it. And so
I thought you were going to say that. That's awesome.
Yeah, initially, because Tyrion has a bit of a high chair, their heads they can look each other in the eye, and when Tyrion stands up with the wine and goes over to pour it, Jaime actually leans back in his chair, maintaining the kind of eye level between them, which is just a way to say that the visuals are really, helping you make this argument that there is a real equality between the two sort of Forsaken Lannister children.
Yeah, and it works. We get sort of not exactly a training montage, but something kind of close to it, where Jaime is at his low point, and Bronn's kicking his ass all around this little kind of seaside courtyard, and Jaime decides he's going to fight back, and he's actually going to take a stab at becoming a swordsman again. And then we get this second scene with the Dreadfort where we meet Walda Frey, who lovely young lady,
oh, yes.
And her new husband, and then she meets the bastard stepson for the first time, and he's playing nice, but like under the surface, he's got these crazy eyes going on, and it's kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
I know one of the things I really liked about the show, and they've done this before with regards to Sam, is that it would be very easy for the show to actually be sort of fat shaming at this point, right? For the show itself, for its attitude towards her to be sort of mocking, but they actually make it really clear in the way that Bolton looks at Snow that I'm fine with this. I'm fine with.
Yeah, he respects her.
Yeah. More
than he's respecting his son in the moment.
Yeah, at that point, and I think that's a really. I think it's a really sort of good thing for the show to see. I mean, because so many shows, you could think of 50 sitcoms off the top of your head where the blind date, comes to the door, and she's overweight.
Yeah.
And and it's just where the show itself is clearly asking you to laugh at the fat person for being fat, whereas here, if we're being asked to laugh at her at all, it's because we know better than she does what a Bolton is.
Right. So, just two things I just want to end the Dreadfort sequence on. One, I like the interaction between Locke and Ramsay. And it's kind of interesting to sort of say, like, this courtyard that in many ways looks very similar to Winterfell is a different place because this is where people who think like Ramsay live. That Locke is like, oh man, you would have loved it when I mutilated a person. And then the other thing is I really like the plot dynamics they set up. That Locke is going to go hunt the the Stark children, and he's going to come in conflict with Jon Snow, and that Theon and Ramsay are going to moat Kaelin. And then we get sort of a kind of three linked scenes: Varys and Tyrion, the royal breakfast, and Tyrion and Shay. And I kind of, being someone who's read the books, I kind of see how this is kind of setting different things up. And I kind of liked it. It was certainly better than the jealousy thing that they were going with last episode.
Yeah.
In that they're very clearly setting up, like Varys is setting up, there is a danger, to you and to Shay. It needs to be dealt with. Then at the breakfast, while the family's all in a line being nice, and they meet Mace Tyrell, and he's being the kind of oblivious guy that he is, Tywin and Cersei are like zeroed in on Shay, and clearly they want to capture her. So it's like threat is described, threat is shown, and then Tyrion tries to deal with it. One other thing about the breakfast, kind of the thing I found a little bit annoying, although I really liked the way that sort of Joffrey shifted between trying to play nice and then kind of not being able to control his impulses once he gets the sword. And my question was, why not have the line about the dagger?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's because how do I put this? There are a lot of the ground is littered with red herrings at this point, and the destruction of the book with the sword is, I think, an important one, because of Tyrion, of them having established. So I think the sword play was sort of, they wanted to focus on that because that's the potential, straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, it's not just. I'm not so sure it's that. It's that it's a moment of recognition for Tyrion, that he sees Joffrey in this kind of, with a blade in his hand, in full kind of psychopathic flood, and that's the moment where he makes the connection. He decides to test Joffrey. So I thought that's a missed opportunity for the show. And then we get Tyrion and Shay, where Tyrion sort of does the old Yeller thing. He's, being a deliberate bastard and rejecting her and driving her away to try to save her. And I thought, this is better than jealousy. He's actually done something emotionally cruel. He's denied their relationship. And at the same time, the way that Tyrion is playing this does tie back to Shay and to Tysha, and what it means for Tyrion to be in a relationship with a prostitute.
I agree, and it also, in strange ways, builds on this. I don't want to quite call it chemistry, camaraderie, maybe we'll call it, between Tyrion and Sansa, which we're going to get a lot more of, and we're going to have a couple of big gestures as the episode. But much more so than when I was reading the books, I get a really strong sense that Tyrion, if he's not coming to love her, he's coming to respect Sansa so much that it resembles something like love. And it's not just an instinct to protect either. It's I don't know, and I didn't get this reading the books, and we're just starting to see this in this season. And I'm not going to say what happens as things go on, but structurally, there's something going on with what Tyrion does to people he truly has affection for. I'll sort of drop it at that, but
Okay, so it's just because we got a lot to get through, I want to kind of keep us moving.
We can talk about 8 hours. 8 hours.
I know. So I didn't quite like this opening bit with Melisandre and the sacrifice, because to me it changed the way that this is in. All right, I'm not being very coherent. In the books, when this happens, it is an execution for treason that Lord Florent, who previously was Stannis' Hand of the King, betrays him in offering to make peace. And this is a mode of execution. This is not the religious execution of a heretic. And that's, I think, the show in some ways does not understand Stannis as a character. And I think it kind of does a disservice. I will say, though, that at the dinner sequence, I liked both Stannis and Selyse in a way that I hadn't in the previous scene. That Selyse comes across as a really messed up woman who has turned to faith to sort of solve some of the problems in her life that are insoluble. And
unsolvable. No, I think they will dissolve in water.
Yeah. But also that, like, Stannis has more of his own kind of independent character here. That, although he's, in the previous scene he's talking about a heretic, he seems much less impressed by the religious stuff here. And he puts his foot down about his daughter. Like, whatever else, Stannis is not going to let his daughter get hurt.
Well, I think it's really significant that in the previous episode, our sort of reintroduction to Stannis was secondhand. Brienne telling Marjorie that he's a shadow, because that's sort of what he has become, a secondhand account of someone who is sort of insubstantial. And I mean, this has been a complaint with a lot of people. Like, what happened to the War of the for the Kingdoms? But I sort of like the fact that, as you say, Stannis, is putting his foot down. He is becoming more substantial, and I do think that might be the beginning of a good character arc.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, because important things will have to happen with him.
Yeah. And I did like the scene with Melisandre and Shireen that kind of, showed that Shireen has, an independent mind of her own, but that, like, also gives some humanity to Melisandre, because I think my problem with that first scene with the sacrifice is it makes her look too much like a villain. And what I think this scene kind of does nicely is to say she's not, in her mind, a bad person, and she's not someone who acts out of sadism.
Or is that Salon article, which kind of cast her as the female Taliban, that she is the true believer who doesn't believe she's wrong. It's a terrible article. I mean, it's absolutely contrarian.
But at the same time, kind of they add this kind of interesting Gnostic element into the faith, and then that kind of feeds into this really great scene with Bran and the tree, which was very different from the way the show has been done up until now. And I loved it. I loved how they used the mystical side to give plot direction for Bran, that now we know where he's going. He's going to the tree.
And it was also, I mean, he really hasn't had that much of an opportunity to kind of stretch his acting legs. So, okay, that was the worst analogy possible. To really sort of show what he can do. Stretch his legs. Jesus Christ, Scott.
Yeah.
What a fucking asshole. So yeah, I think it was really great that we had a chance to sort of be reminded of why Bran might be significant. We got a bit of this at the end of last season, but at the same time, Bran seems sort of like, Lord of the Rings if Gandalf hadn't been in it. He knows he's going somewhere and it's important, but he's not sure where it is. It's just like that away.
Yeah, and he doesn't have anyone leading him by the hand.
Yeah, and he seemed very directionless. And now, just by giving him a target, there's the opportunity for actual narrative tension. What if he doesn't reach the target? As opposed to, will he just keep walking?
Yeah. And now we get the wedding. And obviously you're the one who's going to talk about all the visuals here. I will say, I like that the way that they framed the bit where the Septon says, cursed be he who would tear them asunder. And on one side you have Oberyn Martell, and on the other side you have the Tyrells. And I was just I like that. We're reintroduced to Tommen. He is the other Lannister. I did think it was interesting that Joffrey is officially of houses Lannister and Baratheon. It's kind of an interest, we're seeing the aggrandizement sort of rhetorically, visually, in every conceivable way of the Lannisters. I even liked the bit with Tyrion and Sansa, where they're sort of like, oh, there's a new queen now. Oh yeah, well, better her than you. And then we just gonna get all of these fascinating interactions. We get Olenna and Tywin talking about money, and bringing up the Iron Bank, and why the Iron Bank is important, and why you need to pay attention to the Iron Bank.
Should we be paying attention to the Iron Bank? Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, and Mace Tyrell is literally chucked out of the conversation. Like, he tries to enter and just bounces off. And then, Tyrion and Bronn talk about, Shay's on the ship, right? She's on the ship, right? She's on the ship, right? The ship left, right? And Varys, Bronn, and Tyrion are the only people she knows are on the ship.
Yeah, to start with the visuals from the wedding, on the one hand, it totally recapitulates Tyrion's wedding to Sansa. They're using the same camera angles initially with the sort of, the crane shot of them as walking up the aisle, then the shots of each of their faces in profile. The thing that's missing, obviously, from this is Joffrey's sort of mendacity.
Yeah.
From what he did. And I think there was a little bit of, at least visually, because they were recapitulating that scene, there was a little bit of tension, like, will someone mess this up? Will someone dare to actually do to Joffrey what, and you sort of got a sense last episode that Oberyn might. That he might,
right.
He might make a scene. But what's really interesting is that instead of all of these medium shots where we can see what everyone is doing, whatever, the camera is tight on everyone. It's face with half screen and shallow focus, so all you can see is face. And they go from Sansa to Tyrion to Joffrey to Marjorie to
yeah.
And then they make them part of families. All of these individuals have their own motives. They all have their own thoughts going in their head, but there are teams.
Yeah, there definitely are. But at the same time, it kind of, the way that people are moving around this space kind of creates what I think of as this rock tumbler for characters, where they just suddenly bounce into each other. So
can I steal
Olenna,
yeah.
Yeah. So Olenna bounces into Sansa and says, what sort of monster would kill somebody at a wedding? Wink, wink. And the wind has been at you, and she arranges Sansa's hair and touches the necklace, and then says, "Come to Highgarden." And then we kind of go back to the dais, and we can see that Joffrey has zero patience. He's squirming literally like a child, whereas Marjorie is total composure. She's playing politics. She's offering food to the poor. She's doing this kind of, really kind of command performance. We then get this bit. I just love this kind of unspoken thing where the Viper, the Red Viper of Dorne, Oberyn Martell, is I fucking the Knight of Flowers, and they're clearly both into it. And I was just like, that didn't happen in the books, but it's amazing that it's happening. And then Loras literally, we go from there to Loras literally bumping into Jaime, and both of them throwing shade at the other one, you're never gonna actually get to marry my sister. Well, neither are you. And it's just, that's wonderful. And then Brienne arrives, and she looks enormous and amazing and bright blue, and Marjorie really likes her, and Joffrey's being a bigot, and Cersei is gender policing and getting jealous about the fact that Brienne and Jaime clearly have a connection that Cersei no longer has with Jaime. And then Cersei gets really petty with Pycelle, and I love this. the fact that like she does this power play about I'm the queen over such a minor thing, food for the poor. It's it's hilarious.
Food for the dogs now, tactically. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because when I imagined what this scene would be like, I really did kind of think it would be a lot like Tyrion's wedding. And those of you who know my vast work with laser beams know how significant I thought eye lines were at Tyrion's wedding and in sort of communicating what couldn't be spoken.
Right.
And all of these weird alliances were being made just by glances and looks. And what's really interesting about this is there's almost none of that. Here, people are like, well, you know what? There, we had to put on pretense. Here, everything is going to shit. I'm just going to walk right up to you and tell you exactly what I think. And there's sort of this breakdown in decorum, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it. In part because it's starting at the head. Like, Joffrey is just engaging in casual sadism, whenever he gets bored. And then sort of everyone else kind of takes their cue from that. And you get this great scene where Oberyn and Ilaria meet the Lannisters. And they're setting up this whole thing about cultural differences, political power, and then just Oberyn comes right out and says, aren't you lucky that down in Dorne we frown on the rape and murder of children? And oh, by the way, your daughter is in Dorne.
Yeah.
And he's just like effortlessly fucking with both Cersei and Tywin, and neither of them can really do much beyond being, in Cersei's case, slightly snobbish about bastards.
Yeah, my wife actually, who read the books before I did and hasn't in a couple of years, but she watches the series. When he said that, there was like a couple of beats, and then she just looked at me. She's like, "Wait a second, isn't her daughter in?" Oh, because it's a real, It again,
right.
It's the exact opposite of Tyrion's wedding.
And then we get this amazing set piece where this lion mouth that we've been staring at for, at this point, like 15 minutes, finally opens as part of Joffrey's crusade against fun. I did think it was funny. It was like, at this moment, they're literally making him, like, aesthetically a bad person.
Yeah.
It's not enough that he's just a sadist and an asshole and everything else. He's also, like, likes bad drama and is against fun.
Bad drama that flatters his vanity. I mean, this is a...
Yeah.
I'm actually sort of surprised that he didn't jump in at some point. Like, instead of having a little person play him, being
the giants among the little people, yeah. But it works like this because he gets to sit back and be this kind of hideous, giggling child while he's inflicting emotional torment on everyone around him. Cersei, and you notice Cersei is into this. Like, she's laughing and smiling because Loras and Marjorie are miserable as Renly is put on stage as this figure of, and Olenna is like stone-faced as Renly is on stage as a figure of like sexual deviancy, with like Loras literally under him.
Yeah.
And Marjorie just looks like totally not going to react. Varys is giving this epic side-eye to the whole concern, and Tyrion has this very measured reaction. He's not going to let Joffrey have the pleasure of seeing him get angry. He says to Pod, give the dwarves their gold, and we'll have to find some other way to reward the king. That might be significant. And Sansa looks sick, and there's that wonderful pan-in on Sansa's face as she's sort of seeing the Red Wedding enacted in front of her. And Joffrey is just, having the best time of his life. And do you have that thing going where you can put screenshots up on this? Okay. Can you go to 43:33? Should be Marjorie looking at Joffrey.
43:33. That's not what it is on mine. Hold on a sec. 4333 is Sansa looking at Joffrey. Let it play. They're all
Okay, hold on
battling.
a second. Let me pull it up. Oops.
Given that we're working from the same copy, we really should be able to sync it.
Yeah, hold on a second. I may be a few seconds early or late. Let me pull my copy back up and see what the hell I was talking about. 43.
4257 is the slight zoom in on Sansa. Resume.
27, 28. Joffrey sort of sprays. That's it. Okay. You see where Joffrey spews wine out, and then it goes to a reaction shot
Yes.
to Marjorie? Put that reaction shot up.
Okay, hold on. He's currently fucking a wolf's head. And I'm going back to Sansa. There. Okay, he spits up. There's his mother laughing, and here we go. I can. Okay, maybe I can't do it on this new. I can't.
Okay. Anyway, we'll put up the. We can put up the image later. All I'm gonna say is. Oh, there it is.
Okay. That works.
So, that's not how a wife should look at her husband on his on their wedding day. And Marjorie has just looked at Sansa. Like, the zoom in, I think that's supposed to be Marjorie looking at Sansa.
I hadn't thought of that. It very well could be. Normally, though, when a character's when a zoom in is focalized through a character like that, it's done from a sort of oblique angle, whereas this seems almost that third-person objective.
Right. It's just that I noticed that. Sorry, go ahead.
It was zooming right in on her face, and then they cut away, and then they cut back to the exact same moment, and they continue to zoom in. That usually signals a sort of. It's more of a for a psychological effect on the audience than something that's through a perspective of character.
Fair enough. It's just, I noticed that right before Marjorie looks at Joffrey, as we just saw, she's looking at Sansa.
Yeah.
So it's like Sansa, Joffrey. And then kind of Joffrey decides to pull, what's for him is the climax of this whole thing is that he gets to pull Tyrion into this. Because Tyrion's a dwarf. And he literally says, who dares to challenge my reign? And Tyrion tries to beg off from this, and, by wonderfully insulting the king, and you notice, Varys has this great reaction shot. And then there's this rising tension with Joffrey pouring the wine, Cersei looking very happy, Tommen, who notably, when all of this dwarf jousting was going on, initially he laughs and then he looks at his uncle and feels bad and shuts up. And, Tommen is sort of reacting to the wine being poured over Tyrion's head. Marjorie tries to defuse the situation. And then we get this sort of following the bouncing cup.
Yeah. But before that, one thing we should mention is all of the cutaways during that to Varys, to Oberyn, because we were talking last week about Tyrion's attempt to curry sympathy,
right,
with the Red Viper, and it was, at least in my view, a sort of sincere attempt. And when Oberyn is actually watching this go on, he's starting to see. I think that's a moment where he actually is recognizing that Tyrion's gesture was sincere. Yeah, that he wasn't. He actually hates this aspect of his family as much as he was saying it wasn't merely for gain. But then we follow the bouncing cup.
And Sansa helps Tyrion, and this is that moment that we were talking about earlier, where she is going out of her way to it's part of I think why we were reintroduced to Dantos in the previous episode is Sansa reminding us Sansa is a genuinely good person. That when she sees someone being abused and humiliated, that she knows which side she's on. And then we have this, again, deepening of tension where Joffrey is saying, kneel before your king, kneel before your king, kneel before your king. And then Marjorie just says, oh, look, the pie.
Look, we have something to eat.
This amazing feeling of relief.
Yes, and sorry, we have a third party now involved in the podcast. Yeah, it is really a Deus Ex Machina. I mean, it's sort of it comes from nowhere and like, hey everybody, pie. Are we not having a good time? Pie. And I'm sort of curious to see how that's going to look in the finished episode, but because it really did look like two pigeons flying out of the bottom of the basket of a hot air balloon. At least for in the version we saw. So
yeah,
I'm sort of curious to see what it's going to look like in the final version, because if it's supposed to be impressive, that's one thing. If it's not,
well, I think it's how the rest of the characters are reacting to it. That the moment that Marjorie says, "Look at the pie," everyone is looking at the pie. They're no longer and then they're looking at the birds. They're no longer focused on Tyrion, on Joffrey, or importantly, on the cup.
Yeah. Well,
and pay close attention to where that goddamn cup is. And Marjorie is then feeding him. Tyrion and Sansa try to leave repeatedly, and Joffrey won't let them. And then there's, again, this building concern. And then Marjorie, in some of the best overacting I've seen in this episode, he's joking! And all of a sudden we're in crisis mode.
And for those who hadn't read the book, and who actually did sort of see this as a sort of housekeeping episode initially, they can't possibly do this soon after the Red Wedding.
Yeah.
Which
and
is why
specifically in episode 2 of a season, right? The big stuff normally doesn't start to happen until like episode 5.
That's why this is such a punch in the gut, because it's I mean, not a punch in the gut, more like a nice gut massage, actually, because we've been waiting for this for a long time. I mean,
yeah, again, it's release of tension, right? We were all wondering, how bad is this going to get? And it's like, no, it ends here.
Yeah, and it was funny because my roommate's reaction, and he has not read the book, was initially, fuck yeah, and then he was like, oh, no more. I mean, who am I gonna?
Huh?
And I was like, don't worry, there are plenty of assholes to hate in the. But
when I watched it, there was spontaneous cheering and clapping.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was the initial response here too. But it was suddenly tempered.
Well, I mean, there wasn't any tempering. We were enjoying it for quite a while.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it was. We had a good 10 minutes before we were like, oh, that's the end of. And then we watched the next episode, and because for a second it was like, oh, is he going to come back? And maybe he will. You haven't seen the next episode, you don't know. But there's what I really liked about the end of Joffrey, and I know you have your theories as to who did it. I have my theories as to who did it. But for a first-time viewer, they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And you say
fun to watch the mystery unfold. I'm
going to be breaking this down for the AV Club. I actually, and I said this earlier with the the all of the red herrings dead on the floor. It's in terms of the direction, it looks like Oberyn spiked the pie, or somebody spiked his cup, but Tyrion and Sansa were genuinely trying to leave, which isn't what you would do if you were planning to poison someone with a cup that you needed to get to. I mean, you see what I'm saying? There's so much misdirection.
All I'll say is, if you are good at watching the shell game of the cup, I think the clues are there. I'm not going to say.
You're with the poison chalice.
Yes.
Okay.
I won't say who did it on this episode. But anyway, next things that I thought were interesting. The parents by his side is a very interesting and different change from the book. And I like it. I think it works.
And it's also
also
public acknowledgement of what everyone had been denying for.
Yeah.
Um,
And also at this moment, critically, Sansa chooses to leave. Dantos pops up and says, "Come with me," and she does. A lot of people have been at least book fans on Tumblr have been really critical about Sansa's storyline and the way that her agency has been diminished. I just want to point out that she's actually making a choice here. Like, she's gonna leave. And then we get, Joffrey's outstretched hand, the wonderful death makeup. I thought that was really good, especially whatever they did to his eyes.
I sort of wanted a little more throat scratching, like.
Yeah, but I kind of see why they did it slightly differently. And then Cersei loses her damn mind and just starts shouting, "Take him, take him!" And we get that wonderful shot of Tyrion bending over to pick up the cup. I thought that was beautifully well done.
I think it's funny that you think you have to forget it. Now I'm gonna have to go back for the Onion thing and actually the AV Club thing, and it really, otherwise you'll write a 1,900-word essay taking me to task for my misinterpretation of it. But anyway, so yeah.
Ding dong, the dick is dead, the wicked dick. Which old dick, the wicked dick. Ding dong, the wicked dick is dead. Come on, join in.
This is our musical episode, apparently. I had not been informed of this prior to the beginning of the podcast, that this would be our musical episode. It's
Come on, Joffrey is dead. Right. Everyone should celebrate.
Everyone have a party. There'll be on the video, I'll edit in 1,000 dancing bananas.
Okay.
Over a picture of Joffrey's dead face. But it's. I gotta say, in weird ways, I am a little disappointed it came so soon, and I think a lot of book readers are because. But on the other hand, I'm actually sort of excited because, in terms of the arc of the season now, if we're not building up to Joffrey's wedding, where the hell are we going?
Interesting. I mean, I wasn't disappointed. I actually thought this was kind of a brilliant choice because rather than have Joffrey's wedding be the build-up, it's like the starting gun. It's like, okay, you were wondering what this season was going to be about? Boom, it's going to be about this.
I'm not disappointed with the episode or with his death or. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit disappointed with the length of it. It could have been longer, but I guess it's just I'm sort of looking forward to seeing where we go from here, given that.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is a sort of crucial point in the books where a lot of critics of the books have said, Martin loses his way a little bit after this, because I mean we're on the road to Meereen, where.
I do take issue with that. I mean, we're about to over the next 8 episodes. This is like Martin at his best. This is the high point, of the books. So okay. I would say after the end of this season, certainly we're going to start to head into some slightly choppier waters. Although I think people's reactions to book 4 and 5 were really colored by the weight, and the way that the book split the characters.
Oh, I thought you meant the literal weight. You meant the temporal weight. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say the 11 years that some people waited to find out what happened to Jon, Tyrion, and Daenerys. 3 of the biggest characters in the series. But because that's not going to happen in the TV show, I think a lot of concerns that people have voiced about well, it's going to start to go into Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons, and that's not as good. I think they're wrong about that.
I think it's a really valid point, actually. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we pretty much wrapped this episode up. I mean, you can't really end on a higher note,
Let's have a drink. A toast.
A toast.
To Joffrey.
Yes. The glass says Newcastle, even though it's lemonade, but yes, An early afternoon beer and lemonade to the dead king. All right, this has been another Lawyers, Guns, and Money podcast. I'm Scott R. Kaufman.
I'm Steve Atwell.
And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.